Welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler, buddy. We live on a Wednesday night. How you feeling?
Live on a Wednesday night, back to the normal bi-weekly episodes after some ups and downs over the last few months.
A little
But
ebb and flow as we were kind of working out our schedule over the off season. We kind of, okay, well, do we feel like it? Do we got
nah.
anyone lined up? Do we have to? Is there
Now,
enough news to talk about? Let's kind of feel things out. And, after, 2 weeks ago, we had some stuff for you, but this has been a pretty busy couple weeks, especially with baseball and some of the stuff that's coming out from the camps that have already started, and some of the stuff that Pride's been talking about with some of the local media. We thought, hey, let's get another one out here. Let's talk these things through a little bit and see what you guys think.
absolutely, it was time. Again, the ebbs and flows of the off season. Sometimes we sit here and we start looking at how much data we have, and it's like that's like 30 minutes, and I can talk. When I sit there and say it's 30 minutes, I can talk.
I mean, we can pad it to an hour, but I don't think you guys want to hear that.
No, you
But
don't.
we got some
Well,
fun stuff for you tonight. We got at least a good hour that is substantive and going to be good stuff for you guys to pour over.
a lot of stuff's broken in the last few weeks, and like you said, Brian, let's lead it off. Let's talk about the baseball program. Um, you know, what a season! First of all, before we get into all the details, what a season! From I think you said it or tweeted out a few weeks ago or a few days ago, a team that was fixed to finish sixth on their side of the conference wins the conference outright, gets a super regional host, gets a regional host, is a top four seed. It is such a gigantic step for the program in general.
Yep. Huge step for the program. This is kind of what they've been building towards, right? Like
Yeah.
we've seen like baby steps, and they finally took that big step this year, and it was good to see them kind of put the pieces together where they could really, put together a run that I think Blacksburg and Hokie Nation in general would be proud of and have been wanting to see for a while, and you know
Super
get to
proud.
the regional hosting. It ran through Columbia twice. Got Wright State in that opening game.
14 runs in one inning. Jesus. That was just impressive. Like the game was kind of over, and I kind of looked away because it's like they're not coming back. We're hitting them hard. But to come back like 30 minutes later and see the 14 spot, it's like, this is. I told you, Brian, I think I texted you. I said, this is like a state championship caliber baseball team playing one that isn't good. That's
Yeah,
what that inning reminded me of. And I mean, they ran through them. They never had to face Gonzaga, the team we talked about the most. They did not show up to the Blacksburg Regional, but
no,
how
their pitching didn't help them, and they did not have the run support
nope,
to
not
to
at
keep
all.
up with Columbia.
It's true. But let's just talk about this and let's just reflect first of all on the regional. To win a regional to win a regional is a milestone for a program because this program until 2022 had been in nine, I believe. It had never got to a super regional.
Yep.
To win it and to get to the super regional, that's a milestone in itself for a program that had never done it before.
Yeah, and it started with the regular season, putting themselves in a position where they could host the regional, where they could get a somewhat favorable draw in the regional and be able to just hammer them out of the park and move on to the next stage. It was huge for them, huge for Hokie Nation, huge for Blacksburg, having that many people show up to campus back to back weekends this late in the season.
Exactly. That this late in the season, the stadium was packed for just about for every Hokie game. To get that first super regional bid, where you were essentially one of the best 16 teams in the country. We had known that all year, but some teams didn't make it.
Yep.
Example is Florida, and and subsequently we had to play the Oklahoma Sooners. And sort of the big news that came out early before the series even started was the hammer, which had sort of been a you can call it a rally call, a team builder, a boost, a fun prop, is ruled by the NCAA it can't be on the field. Well, let's see. at this point in time, we're about 70 games in, and now it's a problem.
Yeah.
Now it's a problem.
Now it's a problem.
We're on
Not
national.
only now is it a problem, but now other teams throughout the country in the supers are using their props, but for some reason the hammer got literally singled out in this instance as being a topic of concern or whatever the hell they wanted to
Bunch of bull.
emphasis, whatever bullshit lingo that the NCAA
Exactly.
uses to justify this shit. And I mean, we can hammer the NCAA all we want to, but my problem is not. It's not just the inconsistency of the application of the rules. It's that also there are actually legitimate problems that the NCAA is not dealing with. But that the hammer is a point of emphasis here because it's intimidating to the opponents. I mean, are we going to pull the turnover chain? Or I mean, does Florida State still have the stupid ass backpack? Like
the Georgia spike pads that they
I mean, does Florida State still have the stupid backpack? Did they get rid of that? Like I haven't watched the Florida State games.
Wait a second. Florida State should not be allowed to put the spear in the middle of the field anymore. It's just it's so scary.
It's intimidating.
Bunch of baloney, bunch of garbage. Especially when the way it was used, it was never it was always pointed towards the dugout, and it was just the Hokies. It wasn't like they were going out there in the middle of right behind the catcher and deciding to do it. They were literally in the dugout, so a bunch of garbage. But they
weren't doing it at the plate. Like if they'd have brought it to the plate or near the batter's box, it's one thing. They're like past the on deck circle. Like they're closer to the dugout than they are.
They're literally
home plate.
4 steps from the dugout. It's just a bunch of garbage. But let's start game one, which was 3:00. The early game, but hey, an ESPN2 game nonetheless. You get national attention right there, and the loss is 5-4.
Yeah.
Watching that game and a good frame job's one thing. A ridiculous asinine frame job should never be called a strike. I don't even care if it's borderline. But when legitimately a catcher is attempting to pull it 3 to 4 inches back in and it's an obvious pull and you're getting a strike call, I was so pissed at that because it's like that ball's 3 inches below the knees. Like that's not, you can't swing at that. It's outside.
Well, there was one call 3 strike that was about 4 inches below the zone and 2 inches off the plate.
It was on the white line. What are you talking about? 2 inches. It was on the white line, which
like it was out of the dirt, and you said it pretty much on the white line, and then framed as the corner. I was like, what? No.
But neither here nor there about that. It took quite a few innings for the bats to get cranked up. They did get cranked up late to cut into that lead, but it was just too little too late at that point. They had their ace going, and their ace is an ace. You could see, I'll say this, their number one is probably going to be a guy in a couple years because I think he's a sophomore. Don't quote me on that. But you see he had good stuff. He has potential stuff to keep his
consistency was his problem. I think when he was on, he was on. When he had control, he was on. But he'd have outings where he'd get plunked a little bit. This is one where he was locked in, dialed in early, and I think
the calls
the opposite on our end. We were not dialed in early on the mound, and we weren't hitting. And when we look back at this series at the Super Regionals, you can point at the missed opportunities in Game 1 as to why we're not heading to Omaha.
It's true, but like you said, though, we had to pull our Friday starter in the second. The bullpen did a great job to keep it close. And for us, with the guy, their number one who was pitching good, but then also getting the calls, we didn't see any of their bullpen. We saw him and we saw the closer, and the closer is one of the best in the country. Guys, 95 to 96. And if you take a look at some of his secondary pitches, one goes down to about 86, and he has a 79 mile an hour something. I want to say it's maybe a curve, but that's who we saw. We saw their best two pitchers. And when you can't shell, and then with the zone the way it was, it hurts. But like you said, Brian, it's 5-4. That's the one that stings you. Yeah. Now, down 1-0, facing elimination, game 2 happens early afternoon, crowd's packed, crowd's jacked, and second pitch of the game, Biddison, gone.
Goodbye.
And
And we talk about the hammers. That I like that they broke out the air hammers for the home
yes,
runs.
yes, they should have got an inflatable hammer
Yeah,
just to really drive it home.
absolutely.
And then, third inning, 2-run shots from Cross and Hunter. And the game's five, basically at that point, 5-0. And it looks like it's going to be a cruise, but, Oklahoma, to their credit, kept fighting and fighting and fighting because we get up into the fifth inning, you know, bottom four, they cut the lead to 1. And then Schobel comes out, answers, gets us back rolling again. But reality kind of set in. We talked about having to use the bullpen in game 1. It happened again in game 2. And it was Hackenberg, who I think he's got the stuff, but you can tell being a younger guy, his arm's not quite there. But to me, his fastball looked fine. He just could not throw a breaking ball before a strike to save his life.
Yep. Yeah,
So
and had to go to the bullpen again. So now you got Hurley and Higgins coming in, and now you've got 3 of your key members of your bullpen have thrown significant innings now.
yeah, throwing significant innings because game 1, to their credit, they kept you in it. But game 2, because Oklahoma's battling back, they had to pitch great, and Hurney pitched unbelievable. Hurney had probably his best outing of his career. And to me, I think you can say give him player of the game because if he doesn't keep pitching the way he pitches, that game could have been tied late versus a runaway, 14-8 victory. But it all set up game 3. And, watching that here, first inning, 2 home runs in the first inning. That is not the way you want to start a game 3 in a super regional.
No, you hate being behind the 8 ball. You hate that you're giving them confidence with the home runs. It's not just you had an error and you had a bloop single driver man in. It's 2 dingers. It definitely from a mental standpoint kind of already puts you in a position where you feel like you're having to push a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's going to hurt you at the plate, and we saw it hurt them at the plate.
Especially in the first couple innings against Cade Horton, the redshirt freshman for Oklahoma. No base runners, no hits. He didn't walk anybody. And when you're going in there and it's 2-0 and you're not getting base runners on, that definitely you can see. Anyone that's ever played baseball, you can see gears start turning heads in the overthinking starts. But they settled down in the third. Malinowski finally got a hit.
Yeah.
Kind of the butt of some jokes, but he finally gets the hit. And then DeMartini brings him home, brings the hammer in the third to tie the ball game. You feel like, okay, we're getting the momentum back, but we give the lead right back in the 4th inning. And you brought this up. I think you texted me while you were down in South Boston that those first. He's like, the bullpen's not there. He's like, we need Hurney, and Higgins with them out. We're just we don't have the gas, and you could see it. They kept hitting the ball, and what can you do? There's not much you can do after that because you've had to play your cards a certain way, and maybe they should go to 5 games because clearly the most talented team didn't win this.
Yeah, I mean, we had a problem. We ended up getting Oklahoma. While they weren't as talented as Florida, we caught them on a hot streak, and they certainly played like a team that was on a hot streak. Because even a game where we were hammering it, they hung around. And from a pitching standpoint, we definitely did not have our best weekend.
No, not at all.
So
not at all. And the hanging around is having to use Hurney for almost 4 innings. Because if they don't hang around, and you can use him 2, maybe you can bring him back in for 2 more, and maybe it limits it. But, after they got down so much, it was you have to start swinging, even if it's bad pitches. Because Sunday, to me, the zone wind back up again for Oklahoma. Because there were a couple of pitches I saw Gavin Cross was going to be a top 10 pick we're swinging at. You normally don't see him swing at, but when they were getting called low and outside, he's swinging at the ball because you know it's going to be a strike. I've got to try to put a bat on it. So, unfortunate, the Super Regional ends in heartbreak, but it's the steps. And you said something. What did you say to me today, Brian, about you sent me.
I was talking about getting eyes on the program.
Yes, there you go. That's what it is.
Yeah, this is getting more eyes on the program. You're seeing Blacksburg on TV in meaningful games late in the spring. So this is gonna have a trickle down effect. This is gonna matter long term. This shows that, hey, we can hit with the big boys. If you come here, you can play in big games.
You can play in big games. You can have a chance to go to the College World Series. You will have eyes on you to where you can potentially be a top 10 pick.
Yep.
And someone else, I cannot remember the name. Somebody was chatting about it today. He's going to get a second round grade. If you can remember and you message us, I will mention you on here. I just can't remember it because I'm getting old. But it's also a way of.
I think it was Schobel I think Schobel was the one getting a
I think is that okay. Grade. But you talk about getting the eyes, but it's also money. When you make regionals and you make super regionals, it's extra money for those non-revenue sports. Baseball and softball have the potential to be revenue sports, though. If you are selling tickets, obviously you've got network games, which the ACC network just is a freaking shit show.
Please fix that. Somebody get in there and fix that shit. I mean,
it's terrible.
It's so laughable. I mean,
it's bad.
I mean, and I'm not just talking about for Virginia Tech. It's putting literally every team in the ACC behind the 8 ball against SEC and Big Ten and Pac-12.
Yes. So somebody's got to fix that. But again, it's a great season for baseball. It's a great season for softball. It was a great spring season. And in general, it was a great season overall. Probably once everything over the next 10 days figure out in Omaha, probably going to be the best finish in the Capital One Clash, which is basically every sport. It's every sport counts, probably going to be our highest finished ever, which is really awesome. And it shows you kind of Whit Babcock's vision of building it, because you're getting to a point now where, like, the wrestling team is probably going to be self-funded in a couple of years. If the baseball team and softball team keep it up, they're probably going to be close to self-funding themselves. And Brian, if these non-revenue sports become self-funded, where does the extra money get to stay?
The foosball.
The football. So let's flip it and let's talk some football here, Brian, because over the weekend had a pretty big commitment. Highest rated guy on the class so far, Laith Ganam or Ganem, however you pronounce it. If somebody knows the exact pronunciation where you can find it, please let me know. But the 6'5", 280-pound offensive lineman out of Charleston, West Virginia, who is the number one player in West Virginia and a borderline 4-star at 247 with offers from NC State, obviously West Virginia, North Carolina, Indiana, Wake Forest, South Carolina. Nice offer list. What's the tape showing on this guy? Because he seems like he's already got the size, and it's not going to take much to put on to be ready for a D1 play.
Yeah, good offer list, good size. What I like about him is he's got a motor. He's a guy that finishes plays. He's definitely an interior offensive lineman. He's not somebody that can be kind of a swing guard tackle. He had some tape where I got to see some one-on-ones, and definitely not the set he needs to be that swing type player, but definitely going to be a solid guard, I think, as he moves along in his career. Got to get about 15, 20 pounds on him. But I think he's going to do solid at the position. I like what I see from him both in pass pro and run blocking. Like I said, good motor, but he's got uses his hands well in pass pro, good punch. and good recovery if there's a good first move by the defender there. So we'll see what comes of him as he works his way through next season. Once we get past signing day, but. I like the pickup. Like you said, fringe 4-star player. He was a 4-star for a few days, composite 4-star for a few days, and then all of a sudden he drops back to a 3.
You investigated though.
So I did. So I don't know what changed, but I do know that Rivals has him as a mid 3. On 3 has him as a 4-star, and 247 has him as a high 3. ESPN has no ranking on him, but that's not shocking because ESPN is, I don't know what the fuck they're doing with their
They need to take
anymore.
them out of the composite.
How are you the number one, pretty much consensus player in a state and you don't have a rating from ESPN?
ESPN just needs to take them out of the composite first, and if they start getting their act together, do their own thing.
At least you got on 3 in there now, so you can still get 3 data points. So you still have a solid trifecta of data points there.
Exactly. So. Also with this win, it's Joe Rudolph's first big win.
Joe Rudolph's first big win. Joe Rudolph's win against with a player that is being heavily pursued. You could say, Hans Hammer was somewhat in that category, but Lath definitely, in terms of major regional players all on board.
Yes, were.
He's the guy. He had West Virginia. He had UNC. He had NC State. I can't remember if he had a Penn State offer or not, but I did not. Okay.
Did not have that. Had the South Carolina offer though.
Yeah, South Carolina. That was the
other. But he had his visits lined up, so it's a big win for Joe. Sean Quinn was the secondary recruiter on that as well. But I think that's something that we all mentioned about Joe recruiting. And it's also a guy who's taken and developed guys into good offensive linemen. So it's almost like if he's got the nose and he feels good about him, you trust the work, right?
Oh, yeah.
The work.
Yeah. This is a guy who's, if he likes the player, his hit rate is so high that you're gonna roll with it.
Yep.
As long as it's pretty much not like a bottom of the barrel.
Although he turned a 2-star into an All-American. So.
He did turn a 2-star into an All-American. So there are success stories like that. Obviously, the lower you get, the hit rate gets smaller. But Joe Rudolph is a guy that can recruit, and because he can also teach, it helps his recruiting. Because he can sell, you come here, I'm going to get you good, whether you're a 3-star, 4-star, wherever you are on that chart. You got a chance to make it to the next level if you come play for me.
100%. And with the commitment there, Hokies stay 25th in the class. So still, again, I think well above our expectations so far this year. And
trending good because we're sitting better than we thought, I think, with some of the guys that are looking to announce their commitment over the rest of the summer. I think we're sitting fairly well with a lot of those players.
Yeah.
So as we continue to move forward, I think that it's nothing but good things here. I don't know where we're going to end up landing. I think just based on the volume we're taking and kind of the trajectory we're on now, we're at least going to be that top 40, top 35.
Yeah.
Whether we can sneak into the top 30 is going to be the question. I think it's going to depend on probably 1 or 2 of those names that are coming due pretty soon, because we got about 7 players, I think, that are looking to commit in the next 2 to 3 months. So before their season starts, they're looking to announce their commitment. We look pretty good with 1 for sure. Whether we end up getting, if we can get 4 or 5 of those 7 to commit to Virginia Tech, then we're looking pretty good as we roll into the season. And I'd feel better about saying, hey, yeah, definitely top 35, maybe top 30. If we're lower on that hit rate, I'd say, keep it measured, top 40, maybe top 35.
100%. All right, let's flip next. Let's talk about, if you didn't read about it, a Hokie football staff retreat down to Bristol. Well, first of all, I've never heard of Beamer or the Fuente era doing this, ever.
Yeah, if we are incorrect, somebody let us know in the comments.
I don't
hit us up on Twitter. shoot us something, let us know if we're wrong here. I don't remember this at least not being well publicized. So we're at
No,
least doing better with communication if we're not doing better with process.
let us know what's happening. And it seemed like a legitimate, almost a typical, corporate type retreat because, it was a 2-day getaway. It wasn't like a week long thing. They had a bunch of different activities. The staff got to choose what they wanted to do, whether it was like, golf, hiking, fishing activities, a plethora of other things. So it was almost like you're going to get away, but we're also going to do some things. And one of the big things was having Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, come in and speak to the guys kind of about the changing landscape of college football. I think that's pretty big in general right there.
Hopefully, you said a little bit about the ACC network deal.
Well, let's hope it gets better.
Sorry, that's twice we've already mentioned that in here.
Yeah, we're going to harp all year. Wait until the season starts because that first night game at Lane at 8 o'clock in BC is going to be on the ACC network.
It's still wild that they were showing fall football reruns while the softball tournaments are going on. And softball regionals, baseball conference tournaments were going on.
Exactly.
Like, what the hell are you doing?
we're going to harp on this all night.
And I mean, I can complain too because I felt like this is one thing, but a lot of times when there was games on at the same time, they were going to like UNC instead of Virginia Tech in terms of network priority. Yeah. And I didn't like that shit because you should put the team from the conference that is hosting in the better position.
It's true.
My opinion. I'm biased. I'll admit it. But I think I've got some logic behind my justification there. So.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But additional to having Phillips there and obviously some staff fun stuff, also had a motivational speaker. Brian, were you shocked when you read one of the first things that this motivational feature discussed was relationships? Because Jesus, Brent, relationship pry. Put it as his nickname.
Yeah, I mean it's all about relationships, and I mean we're seeing some of the proof in the pudding so far. So, and let's be honest, regardless of anything else that happens and anything else that Brent Pry does, when we looked at the previous regime, we saw how fractured those relationships were.
Yes.
So, win, lose, or draw, he's going to end up leaving this program better than he found it because we're at least going to be sitting in a position where we know that the coaches in the high schools in Virginia trust what's happening in Blacksburg from a relationship standpoint. And I think and that's a better building block for whether Pry has long-term success at Virginia Tech or whether the tenure is in the same ballpark as Fuente and we're looking and doing this thing again in 5 or 6 years. Again, regardless of how that is, I like where we're sitting and where we're heading in the direction that the program is taking right now than I have in a while. So,
But you mentioned it right there. The other thing they had the speaker talk about was trust, which is big because, like you said, they're laying trust in the programs around the Commonwealth and around the region about what we are as a as a football program. The last piece was interesting though, and I hear this and it makes me think corporate, but it talked about what are our best practices in teaching. To have a motivational speaker come in and talk about that, because that is something as football coaches that sometimes don't get through. Some guys are great on a whiteboard, can draw up amazing plays, but man, to actually show a kid what to do, they're not good. So I found it interesting.
Yeah, I'm thinking of two things. I'm thinking of like, was what they're talking about, was it based on like differentiation of instruction and growth mindset? Was that kind of the type of like filtering that through football? Like, because I mean those are definitely heavy buzzwords in the education and teaching fields. So is that something that they were talking about? How you gotta what's the best way to get to, people that learn differently or people that
Yeah,
need different levels of motivation to get out of them what their ability is, right? And then focusing on, the building blocks with the growth mindset. You don't have to reach your goal right now, but you need to win today, get better today. Focus on that, and go one day at a time, one step at a time until you reach your goal, and keep that goal in mind. But you got to attack it every day, that like you're going to achieve it, or you're not going to get there.
100%. One other thing he kind of mentioned, I want to get this kind of pull the curtain back from your playing days down at Sydney. He talked about he did this also because he wanted everybody on the same page, same narrative, same language, same messaging when dealing with the team. And I'm also going to think probably dealing with all these camps and all these recruits coming through. Why is it so important? Literally, because he took the whole staff. This wasn't just like he took the 10 coaches on field and some GAs.
Yeah.
Legitimately, if you saw the group photo, it was like if you are in the building and doing something with the football program, you went to this.
If
Why
you're
is that
on
so
if you're
important?
on payroll at Berryman,
You're there.
if you actually get a check from the football program, you were there, and it's important. Absolutely, it's important. Um, and I mean, we talk about all the time you having consistent messaging, and that's what they're talking about, is having consistent messaging from every coach, every member of the staff. When you go to someone, you know that if you ask them a question, you go to the next person, ask them a question, you're getting the same response, and that breeds professionalism across your department. That breeds professionalism across your program, and that means that everyone is also accountable and dependable on these areas, right? That's the expectation. So he's setting an expectation that if you're a part of this program, you've got to talk and understand and be able to speak on a lot of the things that these coaches do. And if you can't, you need to know exactly who to send them to and what to ask them. And I mean, that's important in recruiting. That's important in coaching. That's important in nutrition. That's important in making sure that you're doing the right things with treatment to keep your body right. It's top down, man.
It's awesome. And it's awesome to see things like this, it being publicized and then not just publicized in a picture. Because you can always publicize a picture and not say much behind it, but then actually saying what we did, why we did it, who showed up, what we talked about. Again, the doors are opening back to the program is such a big thing. And then, and speaking of opening, like talking about things, DJ Sims, who went into the portal, was announced he's no longer on the team. He's still on scholarship at the school for the upcoming school year, but it's the I don't know the rule exactly, but basically he can be a student, be on scholarship, not counted against the scholarship. Apparently Lincoln Riley did it with like 10 players.
If a player medically retires or decides to no longer play football, they can remain on scholarship at that school and not count against
Yeah.
the scholarship number for the program.
Yep. And basically, Proud just said he came to me and just kind of said he just didn't want to play football badly anymore. And I know that can happen. We've seen it happen with tons of guys,
Yep.
even more highly touted guys than DJ Sims, that they get there and it's the amount of work, right, to put into to be a Division I athlete.
It's an absolute grind. I mean, just
Oh
speaking
yeah,
as a Division III player, it was an absolute grind. I can only imagine at the Division I level what type of grind it is, especially for guys that are playing multiple years, especially for guys that have other things on their plate as well.
yep,
So
yep. So that's the way the direction went with DJ, and then finally, Rashaud Pernell, he commits to Liberty just the other day. Um, I'm glad he did land somewhere rather quickly, just
yeah,
for him.
yeah, very
Um,
good for him. I mean,
Good.
that's that. If you want to stay in state and it doesn't work out at a Power 5 program, I mean, right now Liberty or ODU are probably the places you want to be in terms of whether you want to stay there for 4 years or whether you want to give it a 1 or 2 year shot and then get the transfer portal to get back on the Power Five level
Yeah. I
because
mean,
those schools are still in showcase games every year.
yep, they are. You get TV time, you get eyes on you. We still don't know the reason why. I know we'd love to know, but we don't know why right now. But um, it looked like Pride talked with Lauren Johnson out at Highland Springs, and a path was given to keep his spot, but it didn't happen. And they released him of his LOI. That's something they did not have to do.
Yeah.
They could have literally sat on that thing until August when he asked to enroll, but they didn't. They did the right thing early.
It's like once whatever thing was not achieved, they were like, all right, well, you go do what you need to do. And
Fine.
you're free to do that. And I you can criticize Pride, you can criticize the situation, but I think overall, um, you always want to get a guy from Highland Springs on your team, but if there's certain things that whether it's the university not allowing or whether it's just a level that you need your players to perform at off the field or whatever it is, you can't make exceptions, or at some point, the rule doesn't matter. Or the,
Absolutely. If there were things that go on and things weren't met, you have to stand on your laurels on that because you start breaking them left and right for certain players and certain things. Then what are you resting on anyway? So, you
you don't
know,
want to lose your locker room when playing favorites
exactly.
and things like that. So I
Why
mean,
does he get to
I
do it?
get it, and then like I said, it is what it is. I wish Rashaud Pernell nothing but the best, and anyone pretending that this isn't a blow for the Hokies is probably kidding themselves.
It is a blow because he was
Um,
underrated. He was an
he
underrated
was
guy.
underrated. He was underrated, and I think we talked about it, him being a tweener and that hurting his overall ranking. If he'd end up in a three technique, I think he'd have been all right with us. Played at that level, and that's a need position. This year and next. So, thankfully we've got some other guys coming in. Hopefully the young guys will show out and we're able to shore up that position group. But it's definitely going to hurt for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so we got to talk about this because I thought he was in the Hall of Fame, but he's not. So Corey Moore, the man who coined the Terror Dome back in 1999, is not in the College Football Hall of Fame. He is eligible again this year, and I'm sitting here wondering how. How? Ready? Drum roll. Here are your credentials. He played 2 years of Division One football. In those 2 years, 31 sacks, including 17 in one season, which broke the Big East record. He was a second and third team All American in 1998. In 1999, he one upped it. He went and he was a unanimous All American. Also, in both those years, he was the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. One of those years, it was unanimous. It was the first time it ever happened in the 10 years of that conference at that point in time. And you go back and think about it, that was a conference where Warren Sapp and some of the best defensive players down at Miami played, not counting some of the guys at Tech. In 99, and if you're at Virginia Tech, guy, you already know this, but just to make the case, he won the Nagurski. He won the Lombardi. He was Football News Defensive Player of the Year. How on God's green earth is literally a stretch of football in 2 years where somebody does that not Hall of Fame worthy?
It's not. I mean, there's no way. How he's not already in the Hall of Fame is asinine. Um, just 98 and 99 alone. I mean,
That's it. He played 2 seasons because he was a JUCO.
yeah.
You sit here and then the sound bites and the way he played. He literally was a madman on the field. It wasn't like he was sitting here, taking perfect angles. He was literally trying to rip people's heads off. And If you ever want to see something funny, and a lot of you Hokie fans know this, that the presser at the Sugar Bowl in the national championship is still one of the funniest pressers of all time. Of all time. So whoever you are out there, writers, get right, put the man in the Hall of Fame. He deserves to be there because he is literally one of the best defensive ends all time in college football.
No doubt. No doubt.
All right. We're going to mention this real quick for those who haven't seen it. July 18th, Hardywood Park Craft Brewery at West Creek out here in the west end of Richmond. The tailgate tour continues. Coach Brent Pry from 5 to 7 will be there. I'm going to assume it's going to be some other players or probably some players at that point, probably some coaches. We'll be there. Tickets already purchased. And I think me and Brian were wondering a couple months ago. We saw our friends in Northern Virginia and some people down at the beach getting. It's like, when the hell is he coming to Richmond? Jesus Christ, this is where they brew the Hokie beer.
Yeah, we figured it was going to come back around, and it did, and it's at Hardywood, which makes sense. And I'm excited for it, man. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to hearing things that a little bit further than what we're getting from some of the media clips and meet and greets and all that stuff, and just being around other fellow Hokies and having something to cheer about. I think is going to be nice.
Yep. So it's $20 for attendance. You do get 2 free drinks, and they're going to have light food. Which, if you've ever done any sort of the Hokie Club stuff in any locations, it's usually like that. And usually, to be very honest, one of the cool things about going to these events is you usually have access to the coaches. Take a look at my Twitter picture. It's with Bud Foster. I met him at one of the Hokie Club events, talked to him 5 or 6 minutes. Probably a little bit too long, but
Curtis going long in a conversation, never.
Hey, I met Coach Cav too. Coach Cav, hilarious. They should invite Coach Cav to all these events so he can just roast other teams and make fun of other players. So he's a great one. All right, when they're not coming to Wilkesboro, Robbie, you just need to get us a report on that crosstown rival of yours. What's his name, Brian?
Kamen Smith.
Kamen Smith. We're going to get some detailed. We're going to get some detailed reporting on Kamen Smith when Coach Robbie Compton's defense has to go against that kid on the O-line this year. We'll have to find out what day they're playing and bring him on that Sunday night to give us a full wrap. All right, Brian. Before we jump into the big piece tonight, which is the Brent Pry, the interview, the quotes and stuff from a couple weeks ago, as we look through on the Athletic with Andy Bitter's reporting, we are going to take a quick break for a message from our digital partners.
As we take a quick break, we'd like to tell you about getting your free website report from our digital partner, Grassroots Digital Marketing Studio. They'll tell you how your website ranks on Google, on-site SEO, and social media. No commitment to buy anything. You can get your free report by visiting grassrootsdigitalstudio.com/free-website-report. Now back to the episode.
All right, Brian. So let's kick this. It was an interview. It was about 12 days ago now. We looked at Andy Bitter's info. A lot of the guys had stuff. But let's start with this one on the defensive side of the ball. Braylon Moore has moved to the offensive side of the ball.
About damn time.
Are you shocked?
Not shocked. Not shocked at all.
Not shocked. And I love what Brent Price said about it. He talked about he can be a good defensive tackle, which he can. But then he went that – I love the step when he said, but he can be an all-conference offensive lineman.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing that we're seeing is that, as Price getting a feel for what these kids can do, he's seeing – all right, this guy might be able to help us more here. This guy might be able to help us more there. And not just us. This guy might be able to excel and maximize his potential here or there. And I think that's the biggest thing because, we when you have depth issues like we have at defensive tackle, which we also have them on offensive line too. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul here, but when we're looking at this situation, it's about getting guys into positions where they can be their best, regardless of where those holes are in the roster. Because you can find a guy in a portal, or you can have a guy that next man up. But if you get a guy that's out of position for 3 or 4 seasons, and they never get to their potential, you've wasted that.
Yes, you did.
Get guys where they can be their best, and then you figure out how to fill in those holes if you need to. And I feel like that's what he's going for here.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great way to put it there, Brian. You deal with the hole. If a guy can be not just better, but significantly better at one position than the other, then like you said, damn the torpedoes. Like, we're putting him on offensive line. Could he help us on defensive line? Yeah, but he can really, really help us on the offensive line. Now, speaking of the defensive line, the comment about Payne and his versatility, I got a little bit shocked by that, because he talked about good pass rusher and all this, but when he mentioned that he thinks he has the potential to slide inside on passing downs, I mean, if that's the case, that is a win-win for the defensive line on both the edge and the interior.
Yeah, it lets us be a little bit more pass rush focused when we go into those nickel packages without really losing something. And I think that's going to pay some dividends, because we are thin on that D tackle position this year. So anybody that can give us some snaps, even if it's only 2 or 3 a series, right? Like, if any blow can help here. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be big for us. So I like that. I'm interested to see how Payne holds up, whether he comes in and immediately takes over opposite Garbett, or if he's going to be more that first man out on the second line. It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. But he's at least going to be on the 2 deep. So look for him to be getting significant amount of snaps on top of, as we said, they're plugging in at D tackle at the 3 technique on some of those nickel packages.
Absolutely. When I read about that D tackle, I'm like, that helps so much, because you got Pollard, Kendricks, and you got Puga. They can play. You need one more. And now, DN's same way, though, because you've got Garbett, the known entity. Everybody likes Cole Nelson and feels like he could be the breakthrough guy this year, but there's just not enough on the end. It's just not enough on the defensive line in general. I mean, I'd love to see something in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think we feel decent about the 2 deep. Like, you got Garbett, who's a pretty good player for us.
He is.
And you got the potential of Payne. Griffin can give you some stuff, and I think we're seeing Cole Nelson come along. Who's going to be that 5 and that 6 that are going to get those about 10 snaps a game that are going to make or break whether you can hold up, right?
It's true.
So that's going to be the question mark. I think we're going to be okay. Those first 2 lines, both at DN and D tackle, it's going to be those, like I said, 10 to a dozen snaps that third line is going to have to take. That's going to be the question mark. Are they going to be able to give us enough to hold up?
Yep. It's also wondering, can CJ McCray come up a little bit more, just a little bit more? He looked good in the spring. The question is, can he take that step? And the same with Pernell. Pernell looked good in the spring, but can they take the steps? But like you said, Brian, if you tell us McCray and Pernell, yeah, I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but it did. If you can, like you said, just stealing a snap here or there, stealing a tapestry here or there, and just being effective, not necessarily blowing the doors off somebody, but being effective, good technique, whether it's causing disruption, holding down, holding up a blocker. It's those little things. It's the game of inches that's going to be so key. Now, speaking of games of inches, in the linebacker room, seems like Brent Pry wants Dax to lose some inches and get a little bit leaner and lose a little bit weight over the next couple months here.
Yeah, looks like he wants Dax to drop as much weight as he can, which, I mean, that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes for him. In this system, having a lean and fast linebacker is more important, even at Mike. So that's probably the move at this point, especially since we don't know whether Dax is going to be our best option at that position or not yet. It seems like when we talked earlier about Keyshawn Artis sliding in there, that he wasn't quite there from a leadership standpoint, even though he was at least at or near Dax's level in terms of on-field play. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's a rotation there, what that looks like. But I think a leaner Dax is better because I'd rather Dax. Dax has shown me that he struggles sometimes shedding blocks, whether he's at the weight he was last year or at the weight he was 2 years ago in 2020. So I think I will take the leaner and faster Dax, who can potentially get to the edge, get to the outside, run sideline to sideline a little bit better, because he's probably going to have those head scratcher plays regardless. and that's just, I think, the player that he is at this point. We'll see if he can raise his game up under Pride, under Marv. But I would temper my expectations. So I think the leaner the better, because it gives him a little bit more versatility to make plays outside the box.
Yep, and that's something that Pride talked about. It's like the Mike in today's game can't just play inside. They also have to be able to range, and that's why he was looking to get him leaner. Now, one guy we know that can range is the projected starter at the Will, which is Alan Tisdale. But one thing about Brent Pride we're finding, he does not mince words. He's not afraid to openly praise or constructively criticize people. And he was that way with Tisdale in this interview. And he talked about basically, hey, when he's on, he's really good to be out there for us. But then he talked about, but when he's fatigued, he gets sloppy in technique. He's just not one of the good players. And it kind of in a roundabout way, Pride even began discussing where there might be some Sams practicing at Will in the fall.
Yeah, and I think that's twofold. So I don't necessarily say this is Pride saying Tiz is losing his job. He did say that there's some competition there, right?
Yeah. Keller.
But, Keller and a couple of the Sams sliding over as well. I know you just talked about. So I think there's some options that we have there. But I think what this is telling us, number one, it's an explanation behind what we've been seeing on film for the last 3 years. Because we're looking and we're saying, damn, Tisdale will have these plays where he looks like the best defender on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 plays later, he looks like he's lost or just isn't getting to where he needs to be. Like there's just so many things that were just head scratchers, and we didn't know whether is it effort, is it fatigue, is it not knowing assignment. Like there were so many things that we had question marks on, and this definitely goes a long way, I think, towards answering those questions about his inconsistent play. The question is, number one, can he get better between now and the fall? Because
it's not so much
a lot of fatigue. I mean, a lot of fatigue is mental, right? I mean, because he's in shape.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going. He's going through this with everybody else, so he's in shape. At some point, there's got to be a mental block where when you feel tired, when you feel like you can't give anymore, you give a little bit more.
Yeah. And
you got to push through, and that's a mental thing, and sometimes it takes. I think this competition, this like culture of competition that Pride's breeding could help with that, because he is being pushed beyond that limit consistently. Yep. He's not given the option to quit. He's not given the option to not get to the line or not go through. It's more than that. So I'm hoping that type of atmosphere is going to help him. So, but number two, when we talk about other guys getting reps and we talk about Sam's getting reps, if you can't get Tisdale to where you want to be, if you got other guys that can go in there and give him some blows, some extra blows
Yeah,
where he can be fresh for more of the game, you get a better Tisdale and you don't get as many holes in those moments where he's fatigued.
exactly. Now, one thing he did say, and obviously it goes to what he was talking about having the Sam's practice. He feels good about the Sam's. He feels good about Keontae. He feels good about JR. He feels good about Kalai. Um, and the thing is, I think me and you talked about the other day, Brian. Keontae's the best overall. He can do a little bit of everything. He can cover. He can blitz. He can play man. JR, safety, probably more coverage, maybe play a little man. Kalai's you're going to come attack. So we might be tipping our hands. Let's say you got to give Tiz a blow. You move Keontae over to Will and you bring Lawson in. You might be tipping your hand. Hey, we're coming this time because who we've got on the field. But sometimes that doesn't matter, does it? It's execution. Like you know what's going to happen now. You have to execute against what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, 75% of the time we're bringing an extra man
Anyway,
anyway. So there's going to be some degree of attacking that's happening, regardless of who's at Sam or who's at Will. I don't necessarily call it tipping your hand, but I think it's definitely saying, I mean, we're coming after you. Now we're just saying we got this specific guy coming after you. And if I know Lawson's coming after me, I might get rid of that ball a little bit quicker than I'm ready to.
just a little bit. Just a little bit. Because he's shown how quick he can get there. And again, it's like the Walker thing. If you keep Walker out there, well, maybe they're just dropping him into flats or some sort of coverage, not blitzing. But I think how he feels about the Sams really, really tells you that a couple of those guys, especially Lawson, that he looks at athleticism on the field. And if you've got some high athleticism, he's going to find a way to get those guys on the field because of the way he likes to attack.
He values speed and athleticism over some of those other things that I think the previous regime may have valued more. I'll leave it at that. Um, I think he's looking to get guys that are fast, that like to hit, and that like to go after the quarterback, especially at those linebacker positions.
There you go. All
And
right.
Robbie said it best, so I'll throw it up here.
What's that?
You know it's
There
coming,
you
but
go.
can you stop
There
it?
you go. Can you stop it? If you know it's coming, can you stop it? And a lot of teams cannot. All right, let's go to the room that he said basically he feels the best about the defensive back room. Talked about the safeties. He feels like there's four guys there between Connor, People, Stroman, and Hawkins, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
Because only one of those guys is out after this year, and that's Connor. So that room's ready to roll. Not only
The
this year,
safety room is in good hands going forward for at least the next 2 to 3 years. So
yeah,
you feel good about that. You got a bona fide leader in that room, but you also have one guy that's played significant snaps. You've got a guy that has played some decent time in his short time here with Stroman, and then you got Hawkins that's kind of mixed in here or there, throughout his time in Blacksburg. So you got a really good mix of ability and experience. And the question is going to be: is Connor's transition going to be a good thing for him? We'll see.
yeah.
I think that's the biggest question mark for everybody right now with the DBs. But in terms of just experience and ability, I feel pretty good about safety.
Can I say something real quick?
Yep.
I think if Connor wasn't doing a good as job at safety as he could have been down at Sam, I think Brent probably would have flipped him. I don't think he would have waited or hesitated if he did not feel comfortable leaving him back at free safety or field safety, whatever you want to call it. Look how he did the rest of the year. He's not been afraid to just move guys, even guys you're expecting, like Braylon.
Yeah.
Braylon did not have a bad spring at defensive tackle. He just felt better there. So I think if he felt better about it, he'd move it. Let's talk about the corners again. A group he feels good about with Chapman and Murray, Strong and Elijah Howard and DJ Harvey. But he did mention again he still wants one more. What sort of, why is he wanting one more? And is the one more, do you think we haven't seen anybody come through the portal because he doesn't want one more just for this year, he wants one more for 2 to 3 years, or why is
That would be my inclination out the gate, because I think he feels. I'd go one of two ways. So let me throw the caveat in there. So I think he
Okay.
feels. I think he feels good about Chapman. He feels good about Strong, and he feels good about Harvey when he's in the slot. I
Okay.
think he is fine with Murray and fine with Howard or Johnson, whoever is playing boundary and field respectively.
Okay.
Now, I think what he wants is he wants a dude. He either wants a dude, which, I mean, there are very few of them,
Yeah. And there ain't many
and
dudes in the portal.
because for what this unit has in experience, they definitely lack in terms of high ceiling, high caliber player. There is not, in terms of what they've done so far, there is not that guy that's had that one season that has said, "Damn, you better watch out for him this year."
Exactly.
They're a solid 2 to 3 guys, another 2 guys that you feel comfortable with. There's a lot of good depth, but there's not anybody great on that unit. So you're looking for a dude. Short of a dude, you want to find a guy that has 2 to 3 years of eligibility left that can play in that spot either ahead of Murray or ahead of Howard and Johnson.
All right.
That's what I'm thinking. Just because they would like to see a little bit of a ratchet up with that next man up there in case there is an injury.
Yeah. All right. Let's flip over to the offense, Brian. And, something that just, I know it jumped out at me. It probably jumped out more so at you. He was talking about what you've seen on tape already. Tyler and Joe like multiple formations.
Yeah. We had a whole episode with that with our buddy Robbie Compton that's plugged in a little bit here for us. We went through, we like multiple formations. We like moving tight ends over the field in motion. We like lining them up all over the field. We throw some unbalanced formations out there. They deploy the tight end, and they use that to create the mismatches and the areas where they can outflank the defense.
Yeah.
And that's the bread and butter, and then they line up and run a play at you.
But it's just refreshing to hear it, though. Because again, I mean, it's the theme probably of the last 6 months. It's the things we wanted to hear about and hear somebody talk about, we're hearing about. The things we see, we're hearing, we're getting some answers with, especially talking about how Rudolph used those tight ends. You're talking about motioning the tight ends. There's a lot of plays they like to do that with, or he did like to do that with up at Wisconsin, which you feel like you're going to see in the playbook this year.
Yeah.
Now, something else he was very adamant about, and I think we all feel this as Tech fans and just as football fans in general. He says they've got to figure out ways to be successful in the run game. And,
And I think some of the RPO elements that they're bringing in with the having 2 or 3 options, whether it be running the ball or passing the ball, I think that's going to help alleviate some of that, I think, slight drop-off that we're going to see in terms of offensive line play from this unit this year. I think some of the way they have the offensive scheme will allow us to be more successful in that. So when I say there, I'm thinking think of UNC. UNC, for all their great skill players and everything, have a pretty average to below average offensive line.
bad.
But they can still, when things are clicking, they can generate yards, they can generate points.
Yes, they can.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking. With this scheme, you can still generate offense even when your offensive line is at best average, in some cases a slight liability, right?
So we didn't talk about this, but I want to throw this on you. Rudolph has the pedigree of creating consistently above average to great offensive lines. Running a system like this, and let's project a little bit. Let's say in 2 years, we're a top 15 offensive line in the country. What can a system like that do when you have a dominant offensive line?
Well, you can completely dictate the terms because when you can just line up and run effectively, then everything else becomes so much more dynamic because you still have to stop the run first, right? As a defense,
Absolutely.
that's what you got to do. You got to stop the run first. So it becomes so much more of a liability and so much harder for the defense to stop when you are heavily effective at just lining up and running your base run plays.
Like, we're going to come at you, and then we're going to sprinkle some of the other stuff in. And by the time you pay attention to what we're doing, running at you, we're going to do the other
Yeah.
stuff, and you're going to be completely off guard. And
Because now all those setups work every time because
every
they've got to honor it.
Yep. All right. Going back to the running back room, did it interest you to him talking about that he thinks some running backs might get play at wide receiver?
Not shocked. Not shocked. We talk about Chance Black, but we also think about maybe a Bryce Duke might slide up there if he's not taking a red shirt year this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean that's not going to be, I think, a big shocker to anyone listening tonight. We know Chance Black is kind of Raheem Blackshear 2.0 in terms of his skill set. Does a couple things a little better, does a couple things not quite as good, but I think on the whole he can give us that same type of play. So I wouldn't be surprised seeing him out there. Just to give our wide receiver room, I think, a little bit more flexibility.
All righty. Overall, he said just feels really good about the running back room. He probably feels really good that the running back room no longer has double digits in it, to be honest.
Yeah, we went from 12 to 9, now down to 6. I think that's a nice number that you like to hold on to.
Great number. Another room he talked about feeling really good about, and I think we've echoed this for a while now, the tight end room between Drake, between Gallo. He mentioned Ty Eller, who was I think, Division II transfer in, which was very interesting that he mentioned him. Had not heard much play. He talked about, obviously we know Bumrick's going to be doing stuff. And Brian's favorite, Daquan Wright.
Yeah, Daquan's joining the team this summer. He's already there, so let's not forget him. Like I said, I think he has the potential to make some noise in year one just because of the skill set he brings and the frame that he brings out the gate.
Yeah. The other pieces we talked about too, we've been looking at quarterback, and it from the comments and just the way everything's played, you feel like Jason Brown. They feel good about him, but he is just going to have to do a ton to overtake Wells.
Yeah, they haven't named a starter, but they have named that unless something significantly changes, Wells is the guy. That's pretty much what Brad Glenn said.
That was tech sideline, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read that yet, but I was going to say Brad said a lot, talked about running probably 8 to 10 times, but not all of them being designs.
Yeah, he said somewhere between 9 and 11 rushes for my quarterback, a game, getting 60 to 80 yards, but probably a third to a half of those are not designed.
Yeah. So basically, we're going to have some design, but the other ones are just going to be breakdowns and teaching guys when it breaks, just go. Not 6, not 60, but 6. Sometimes that's all you need is 6.
And a lot of times, some RPOs have a quarterback rush element in them, so that's usually the third option in some cases. You get the designed run, you get the quick pass out, and sometimes depending on the design, there's an option for that quarterback to take off depending on what read he gets. So, that might be whether you call that a design run, whether you call that something
Scramble.
different, but.
Well, it could be a scramble, but still look designed. Like if it's going to be a RPO and you're going to have a hard slant or a hard hook or something, and it's covered perfectly. Well, you see it read eyes up, but then they immediately run, and it's just like, oh, well, that's an RPO design run. It's like, no, it wasn't. The slant was taken away. The guy came down, took it away. He immediately, when he didn't see it, he knew he just had to take off. I like what we were talking about what the quarterback room is, and what you said. It summed up my thoughts perfectly, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're comparing Grant Wells to a Toyota Camry. Everybody, not flashy, not the biggest name on the list in terms of what you'd like to have, but it's well equipped. It's got all the stuff you need. It can make all the throws, and it'll get you where you're going. And I
The
think
six
that's kind
cylinder
of
got a little,
yeah,
little giddy up in the six cylinder.
yeah. You're not gonna drop out on the interstate when you try to pull out in heavy traffic. You'll be able to get up there pretty quick. But I mean, it's not a it's not a Camaro. It's not going to blow your doors off.
Yeah,
It's not a Corvette. Um,
exactly.
but for the
It
most
is.
part, we don't need a Corvette. You want a Corvette every 10, 12 snaps, right? There's
Yeah.
situations where a Corvette gives you a significantly better outcome.
Yep.
But for the most part, snap to snap, a Toyota is going to give you the same output.
Exactly. All right,
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, let's talk about the wideout room real quick. He mentioned feeling comfortable with Smith and Lofton, and then kind of saying he needs more from Blue, Gosnell, and Wright. Does that worry you a little bit? He came out and said that.
I'm not worried about that. I think just anyone that has watched the spring game and kind of looked at things saw that it wasn't Blue's best performance, and I think some of that was related to the offensive line play and the fact that Jason Brown didn't have a ton of time, but also he had that big drop, wide open play that could have moved the sticks on third down. You got to make plays like that at the Power 5 level. You can't have drops when it's a chance to move the sticks and keep your drive alive, because every point matters in certain games, right? So we can't have that. But I think between what he's dealing with,
Yeah.
as he came over to Blacksburg, and I don't know if that's still weighing on him, and he's still working through that. But I can obviously empathize with that situation and understand that if that was going on in my life, I probably might not be as focused on what I need to do as I would under normal circumstances. So I get that, and hopefully he's working through that, and hopefully he gets to where he wants to be, because he wants to go out and show out. So
Yes, he does.
For our sake and his, I'm hoping he's able to get to the level that he can play at, because we've seen what he can do at the highest level of his game. So we're hoping he can match that here, playing against Power 5 competition in the ACC.
Yep. And again, he's had a couple good seasons, and hopefully being primarily with the ones, and then again, what happened, it won't leave his mind. It won't leave his mind, but you hope as time goes on, it's not at the forefront, because I think, to be very honest, Jaden Blue to have practiced in the spring was amazing.
Yeah.
What happened. That in itself tells you so much about him. But hopefully gets in the fall, things a little bit more calm. The kid can show out. I think the kid can be the stick mover. And we're going to need him. And I think him playing with Wells is going to help. Not knock on Jason Brown, but I think playing with Wells is going to help being consistent, which a lot of times that's what it takes, right? Sometimes you just start getting out there and you're playing with the same group every day. You're running the same routes. You're playing the same position, consistency, and you grow right into it. All right, big guy. Let's talk about it, because this is the worry point.
Oh, yeah.
Offensive line. And, when somebody says, I feel good about 6 guys, and you can name 5 of them.
Yeah. I know 5 of the 6 that he feels good about. And thankfully 5 is all you need to start an offensive line.
Yeah, but 5 is not going to make it through a 12.
5 is not going to make it through a Power 5 season. No, it will not. So we feel good about Johnny. We feel good about Caden. Feel good about Silas. Feel pretty good about Parker. and feel good enough about Jesse Hansen, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Who's
when
six?
we look, he said 6. Who is the 6th? And that got my mind, that got my gears turning here. I was like, all right, let's. When I look at the spring game, yeah, I was there. I watched it again a couple times afterwards. Jack Hollyfield is the person that looked the best on the field that wasn't in that group of 5 that I just named. So is Jack Hollyfield the 6th? Is it a Bob Schick, who did not have a really great spring game? Is it Daniel Milichik, who had a up and down spring game? That's the question, and I think
It's no
if I had to put my money on there, it would be Jack.
You think it's Jack? Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's no way it's anybody else. Because everybody else is either walk on, or true freshman, right? From our calculations. Maybe. I mean, you said he played the best there, but when you mix matching offensive lines and you mix matching defensive lines, that's really tough to see, right?
He was with the group that should have probably meshed the best. So
So was he
with
Silas?
Johnny? He was with Silas. He was with that group. So, whether that having Johnny Jordan, because there is a steep drop off at center after Johnny Jordan. So having Johnny Jordan as your center makes everybody else better. I'll say that from point one there. If from a spring game perspective, if Johnny Jordan was your center, your offensive line by default was going to be better. So you take that into account and you look at that. Is that why Jack is performing better, or is Jack performing better because of his ability? Is he showing consistency in practice and in scrimmages when he's mixed matched with different players? That's what we'll find out, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
because we're definitely going to at some point see at least a 6th, probably a 7th or an 8th lineman that's going to have to pull some significant duty this year. So I mean, it's offensive line. I mean, I played it. I got nicked up. I missed games. We usually had 2 or 3 offensive line miss at least one game every year. That's going to happen. So we're going to have at least another guy step up. At least, hopefully one that can play tackle, because right now maybe Bob Schick can play tackle.
He's the 6th because he can play tackle. But you talk about getting nicked up, and again, why people are in Hokie Nation are falling in love with Brent Pry. He said it. If we have a couple guys get nicked, it's sort of that's the oh shit moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything beyond an anything beyond a guard getting nicked, I'm worried.
It's going to be sort of one of those rough seasons, because it's going to be like if we go through 12 games and no offensive linemen have significant or missed time, it's a miracle. So go ahead, start praying. Get some stuff going.
Because like I said, I feel like Jack, maybe Dan can give you a game, at least a half. If a tackle or a center goes down, I'm worried. I'm very worried. Unless Jack can play center as well as he can play guard. But I feel like if Jack could play center as well as he could play guard, he would have been playing center in the spring game.
Potentially. All right. One real quick thing. This is not Hokie related, Brian, but I just saw this announced earlier today. The next 5 years of Army Navy was announced.
Okay.
And here's a couple interesting ones. They're going to go, maybe the first time ever, they're going to play in Boston. They're going to play at Gillette Stadium on the 23rd, 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party in 2023. And write this one down. I don't know how you get tickets. December 14th, 2024, FedEx Field, for the 225th anniversary of the USS Constitution.
Okay.
I have been told.
I like that they're celebrating that. I hate that it's at FedEx Field, because that is the shittiest stadium in the country.
Well, it is. But from what I've been told from people that went, like, if there is ever a game you want to go to that's not your team's game, and you can get tickets, go to this one. So
If any game can make FedEx palatable, it's probably that.
it probably is this. It's probably gonna be it. All right. Anything else broken in Hokie Nation while we've been here for hour and 21 minutes?
Nothing of note, man. I think we're good to go.
All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Visit our website, boundarycornerbt.com, to listen to all of our episodes. Speaking of episodes, check that episode back in February where Brian and Robbie talk about the offensive and defensive sides of the ball to get you some insight of what potentially you could be seeing on the field this September. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube account and on your favorite podcast source, including Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. As always, Jason Long, our buddy, plays us in and plays us out. I am sure he will be down at the Grandin Farmers Market numerous times over this summer, so go check him out there.
He's looking for more shows out there, so anybody interested, hit Jason up. He wants to play this summer. So
yeah, find Jason on Facebook and hit him up. He is looking to play gigs, breweries, wineries, potentially restaurants down in the Roanoke Valley area. Great guy, can literally play any style music. I mean, any. So, please hit him up, or by all means.
He became famous on Longwood's campus for his Prince covers. So
yes, he did.
There you go.
Wing Shack. And by all means, for you guys out there in the Roanoke Valley area that might have interest and can't find Jason online, message us. We have been friends with Jason for a long time. We can phone call him and get him in touch with you. But as always, catch him on Spotify and Apple Music. We thank you for listening. And as always, let's go.
Hokies.